14. We've got 14 people. So first of all, welcome to everybody. I don't really need to do any introductions because this is part 2 of the webinar Tea Sensory Development that Margie started for us a few weeks ago now. And I think it was such a huge success and still so much more to cover that this group agreed that we wanted a second one. So Margie gave a list that Addie has provided you of all the things that you should have with you at the moment. So I have, and let me go through the list, Margie. I didn't have a blotter, but I have a card stock.
That's fine.
I have a scent. I have vanilla extract.
Yay, and that's the good stuff.
Yeah. I have rosemary.
Great.
Lemon.
Wonderful.
Something to cut with and on, and a napkin.
Great.
I have vanilla black tea, and I have my favorite oolong.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So, let's dive in. Just a couple things that we were talking about how we become accustomed or to scents and how quickly we become anosmic to a particular scent. So one of the things that's always fun to do, and I usually do this with particular chemicals and wine and tea, but one of the things that's really interesting is you will stop smelling a particular aroma after a particular amount of time. So the taste changes. But you can actually use this kind of to your advantage. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a sip of the vanilla tea. Those of you who have it. And so you can notice the vanilla notes in there. They kind of stand out. They're a little bit more in the forefront. So now what I want you to do is smell the vanilla extract. You don't have to do anything, fancy with it. You can just open the bottle and give it a good sniff. Now, while we're doing this, let's do a quick lesson on the correct way to smell, or the most efficient way to smell is if you smell in small little sips, just quick little sniffs, like just like that.
Should we do it out of the bottle or out of the cap?
You can do it whichever way you would like.
Okay.
I mean, there are other times when it's appropriate to do it other ways, but I want you to really, get that aroma flavor, that vanilla aroma in your brain. Now, go back and taste the vanilla tea.
I see what you did there.
What do you notice?
It tastes like black tea now.
Exactly. And somebody's still getting vanilla. Okay.
No. Katie's saying that I'm getting less vanilla.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I have like such a small screen.
No, that's okay. I'll read you what's happening there. You
translate the world for me. So this is really interesting, and I was talking with somebody the other day about it and about the base teas that are out there in the world and that we use. And a lot of flavored teas, they tend to just take a flavoring and dump it on any base. And what they don't realize is that after the first few, sips, the customer is no longer will be noticing that aroma that was so alluring to them. This is the same thing that happens with perfume when you're buying a perfume. And they start to taste what's underneath that scent at the top. So and you can use it to your advantage when you're tasting tea as well. You know, what's underneath there, what's hiding under there. So anyway, that's just kind of like an interesting little thing. It works with, you know, jasmine with most, you can do it with a tea. You know, you simply just keep smelling it and smelling it, go away from it, come back, and you'll start to taste the tea underneath. Let's see, what else did I have here that, let's not make a mess right away. I had a question from somebody. I've had a couple of miscellaneous questions from other people, but let's dive into this because I think it's going to be one of those things that the question is fabulous, and it's one of those that we can branch off into an answer by touching on other things I was going to talk about. And the question is for everybody, one of the things that seems to limit my capabilities to improve, quote, smelling skills is limited knowledge. Knowledge may influence the capability to perceive, which is very true in some ways. For example, flowers. To smell the scent of a flower and not recognize it. Does this mean that we must become botanical experts? Otherwise, our smelling skills are numbered. It depends on what you're doing. As a perfumer, and you can kind of all consider yourselves, if you're scenting a tea, you're all perfumers in a way. So if you want to have a whole stock of smells to choose from, you do have to make an effort to learn different scents, what they smell like, and memorize them so that you can pull that information. But if you don't necessarily need to know all of the flowers, all of the fruits, all of the, everything that's out there in order to describe a tea to someone else, or in order to experience it yourself. So let's put the perfumer aspect on the back burner for a while. If you want to improve your smelling skills, as far as being able to identify aromas, it is an effort, but it's very easy to achieve. So, as like with the example with flowers, you need to become familiar with the aromas that you encounter all the time. Like, do you really need to know what a durian smells like? It's not, you're not going to be finding it in your tea.
I hope not.
Yeah. Oh, there is a durian flavored tea that I have had.
I doubt for a second that there is a flavor for every tea out
there. There is. But, you need to know broadly the flavors that you're going to be encountering. So as somebody who has been anosmic for a while, and I'm still retraining all of the scents that I know, it's kind of frustrating and kind of difficult to explain. But you need to be able to identify what you're smelling for your own purposes in a tea. And if there's something there that you don't know what it is, you can simply label it as something you don't know what it is, but it has a certain quality to it. It's kind of like Muscat. Okay, we're all familiar with that flavor. We all know what it is when we taste a Darjeeling. Is it a good Muscat? Is it low in it? But what that actually is the aroma of musk. It has nothing to, people label it as grapes. People label it as muscatel. They label it as all kinds of different things, but scientifically, it is a musk note. So you can label any fragrance that that you experience or taste that flavor that you experience as anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And then in the future, I mean, keeping your, nose out at all times, which is how you learn what's going, how you accumulate flavors and aromas. You will run into that, maybe, hopefully, in the wild, or in a smelling kit, or in a food, and you will be able to tag that, your own little name that you have, the nickname that you have for that aroma. You'll be able to associate it with the real thing.
Yeah. It totally makes sense. And I think what you're saying is not to get hung up on when you're smelling something and your brain is not actually making the connection, right? So I had a student, for example, when she tasted hojicha, her description of it was chewing on the back of a pencil. Well, that's not a scent and that's not a flavor, but it meant something to her. It does mean something. So she, as you say, she tagged it as something, and eventually over time, she'll, hopefully by now, has attached another word to it besides chewing on the back of a pencil.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, when you are memorizing something, and it was one of those things that you thought was never going to end in perfumery school, but each thing, the more descriptors, the more images, the more sounds, the more feelings you can associate with something, the better you're going to be able to retrieve it in the future.
Right.
Recognize it. So chewing on the end of the pencil, it has a tactile sensation of actually chewing. It's a pencil. It's something you feel in your hand. There's a color that comes to mind when you have it. It doesn't jump out and say cedar, to you. It doesn't say roasted, but there is so much more information encoded in that memory. Then and that is what you have to become an expert at, is searching for these things and not trying to put a specific label on it. That we all kind of. Mm-hmm.
When I'm asked, and I should actually say to anybody, if you have any questions, go ahead and use the reactions at the top of your screen. Raise your hand, and you can go ahead and speak. So when I've been asked over the years, how do I get better at tasting? My response always is, you're actually asking the wrong question. It's not about getting better at tasting. It's getting better at identifying and communicating what it is that you're tasting, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, of course, there's the science of the taste buds, and I get all of that. But a big part of it is exactly what you're talking about, is articulating what it is that you're tasting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's so much of it is, we have one side of us when we taste, we're thinking about how am I going to express this to another taster, or how am I going to express this to a customer? How am I going to, take what the customer tells me that they want and then be able to go back and find what the words are?
Yeah.
So there's that side of it, and vocabulary is the key to that. Um,
And then common language, right?
yes, yeah.
Because
And
what one person uses, you may understand as something completely different. And now we're, you know,
exactly, exactly. And it is cultural as well. You know, a lot of people, that's one of the problems in the coffee world now, is they've been so, Specialty Coffee Association is so busy pushing everybody to be on the same page and all this education, um, and their foundation. But people in South America do not have the same flavor references as somebody in China.
mm,
You know, what what we may call astringent may just be, you know, an everyday sensation for someone
yeah,
someplace else.
yeah,
Um, you know, so commonality when we're tasting, like on a tasting panel and in training, is very important. But when dealing with a customer, you really, like you said, you have to come up with common language and things that they will understand. As I think I said last time, the example of somebody saying, "Oh, pu'er reminds me of my grandmother's basement," you know, and you know, your grandmother's basement might have been just full of like cookies and uh, you know, laundry, and somebody else's might be full of paint and
sure.
you know, gasoline and dirt, you know. So you know, you have to
Yeah,
elaborate um on your experience. But when you're just tasting for yourself, or you're pulling out um pulling out flavors, you can yes, it's very nice if you can be very specific and say, you know, oh, it's a hazelnut that was grown in France, you know. But it's more important that you learn to differentiate and then drill down.
yeah,
And sooner or later you will come to a point where, you know, you can't be any more specific. But um, that's for your own use. You know,
yeah,
it's like I encourage people to create their own flavor wheels and their own, you know, or you know, forget the wheel concept, and you know, do your own. In perfumery, there's one school that teaches neighborhoods of
mhm,
fragrances. There's another one that teaches clusters. Um, it's up to you to put them in an organization that you remember them in.
yeah,
So, so like with flowers, what are they? You know, what are they to you? Or with fruits, um, you know, you can do stone fruits. You can do um, citrus. You can do berries, but you
mm,
can also, depending on how you have remembered something or what it strikes you as, you can also do red fruits. You can do
mm.
things that grow on trees. You can do, you know, so it's very personal
Yeah,
when it
yeah.
do, you know, and you know, that's
So
really one of the
Karen's
things.
made a Karen's made a comment about that, which I think is actually to exactly what you're saying. She says that she has some customers that taste lily of the valley in an oolong when the description from the tea grower is orchid. So I think that's to your point, right?
Yes,
Nobody's wrong. It's there's a sweet um, floral that both people, whether it's the grower or the customer, they're both smelling. It's the same thing, but one is identifying lily of the valley and the other is identifying orchid. The
yeah,
fragrance itself, though, it's a sweet floral that's being identified, right?
exactly. And what's kind of interesting is orchids don't really have an aroma of their own.
Right,
Orchids orchids tend to smell like other things.
right.
You know, there are orchids that smell like chocolate or honeysuckle, and you know, so that's kind of you know, and if you get close enough to like white flower, you know, that
Mm,
that encompasses a whole lot of different, or roses, that encompasses a lot of different aromatics.
Mhm.
So now that I've gotten completely off the track,
Should we get messy?
so let's let's get, before we get completely messy, what I want to do is get you to smell and start picking apart a fragrance.
Okay.
So you'll probably want something to write on, just so that you can make some little notes. But go ahead and take the fragrance that you have and spritz it on a blotter. Or in my case, an index card. So, and just to get in practice, always remember to label your blotter on the end that you will hold. And then don't touch it to anything, because that will, the fragrance end, don't touch it to anything, just because it A, makes a mess, B, contaminates it. So spray it on one end, and the first thing that comes off of it, or if you're smelling I do have a candle here from the front. Oh yeah, an aromatic candle. The first thing that comes off of it when you're spraying something is the solvents. So it's, I mean, I smell it then, but does it really matter? But you're not going to start smelling any of the real ingredients until probably, 30 seconds, maybe a minute afterwards. So you can do the ever famous fan around the blotter, like they do in the perfume department, and they don't know why they're doing it. But so you start smell away from you, little sniffs, and both nostrils. This works with it works better with a cup of tea, but okay. So try this. Do a nice couple of nice deep breaths, and while you're doing this, notice the quality of the aroma, the strength of it, what you're getting. Is it how complex is it? Nice deep breaths. Where do you notice it in your, do you notice the aroma on the exhale more than on the inhale? And everybody's going to be different. So this is for your own, this is building up your own process. Okay. Now, small, little bitty, tiny little sips of air in through your nose. So
Okay.
quality-wise, what do you notice?
Of what I'm smelling personally?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, I definitely got those solvents at the very beginning. Like, that was definitely the strongest for me.
Mm-hmm.
My cologne, my perfume that I wear is it's a bit spicy, it's a bit citrusy, it's a bit gingery, and it's a bit bergamoty.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I get the spicy stuff first,
Mm-hmm.
and sweeter stuff afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely get it on the inhale,
Mm-hmm.
and I get it here on the exhale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Get it, even though it hasn't been in my mouth, I'm actually getting it in my mouth on the exhale. Anybody else who wants to jump in, feel free to take yourself off mute. Huh?
I'm sure, Marzi, you have a whole explanation for this, but it's so fascinating to smell your perfume on a cardstock versus on your body, because I've never really stopped to smell my normal perfume on a cardstock, and so it smells totally different when I wear it on my skin. And on the cardstock, I'm getting completely different scents, a lot more woodsiness, and a bit of ambery notes where it's totally different on my skin. So if you could maybe explain a little bit why that happens to us. Thank you. And this is Katie, by the way.
Oh, sure, Katie. Well, there are a couple of reasons for that. Part of it, of course, is your skin chemistry, and which it does affect it does affect a fragrance, whether or not you are very oily or have, like a higher pH or lower pH. It will affect the fragrance a little bit, but most of what it is you probably notice those notes right away when you spray it on yourself. You would unconsciously notice those notes, but again, it's becoming accustomed to the fragrance that those notes are no longer as prominent to you. You've kind of filed them away in the back of your brain. What you might want to do, which is always fun, is if you know where you've sprayed your fragrance during the day or at the beginning of the day, go back later on and smell it with short little breaths, short little sips, and being present and conscious. And granted, some of the volatiles, will have evaporated, but you will get a broader view of your fragrance. Doing it that way. Did anybody else notice the difference between taking small little sips of air versus a deep breath?
I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Okay.
So I'm getting more single notes in the short ones than I am in the long, if that makes sense.
Hi, this is.
I'm not getting as much. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Tasrup. I just, so I've been smelling a tomato candle I bought in Paris last month, and I'm really disappointed in this candle. And now I know why, when I really have dissected it just now. It smells more like a banana. And then the little short puffs smelled like baby powder, which might be the wax of the candle. I don't know, but anyway, that's my experience.
Well, it's interesting because candles, they're considered a household fragrance, and they are not as complex as perfumes are. And what's interesting is the aroma in a tomato is not actually the tomato, but it's the tomato stem, and it is actually common to a lot of other fragrances. So that may be why you're getting, kind of a baby powder aroma to it.
Thank you. Good.
Sure. Yeah, because it's what we actually experience are the separate chemicals, and then the chemicals are put together, whether by nature in a tea or by a perfumer in a perfume. So
Karen says that she smells more intense in the short sniff. So the opposite of what I'm getting. She's getting more intense in the short sniff.
You usually do get more intensity in the short sniffs, as well as you can experience the aromas for longer.
Right.
So you could sit and dissect a smell for a minute or so or longer, by taking short little sniffs. And you can do, I mean, not just one little sniff, you can do, like a series of little sniffs. So you're getting the molecules hitting your receptors is what's happening. And they sit there because there's no more turbulence to get them off when you do short sniffs. So then you take another short sniff and you get more, stimulation of those nerves. When you do a deep sniff, it's constantly taking, the flow of air constantly just has like little molecules just rolling over your receptors. They're just not going to stop. They're not going to stay. It's kind of like flipping through a book at the pictures instead of just flipping page to page. So,
Good analogy.
So let's see what else. Let's see, you've got your frame. Oh, somebody asked me about this the other day, and who was kind of making fun of the fact that I help people learn to taste better. And it's somebody who has been in the tea and wine world for quite a while, and more in tea. So we discussed the fact how he tastes tea, and I said, "What do you mean?" Because we all have like our own like little weirdness of how we do it, and so a lot of people take it into their mouth. They're busy, getting that first hit of it, and they swallow it. Maybe they'll gurgle a little air through it, just because, well, that's because you do it that way. And, or they sip it off the spoon with, great velocity. And I said, so do you ever slosh the tea down the side of your tongue? I said, well, no, why would I do that? I said, well, have you ever thought about trying it? He's like, well, yeah, I could. He's like, well, yeah, smart ass. And took a little sip, and he was like, oh my God. Oh my God. So yeah, I mean, he was just like, this is how you do it. So I think what I'd like you to do is, we don't have to do this now because you've got the rest of your life to do this, but I'll kind of run you through some of the options that you have when you're tasting. Take a sip of tea. I can't do it and talk at the same time, but take a sip of tea, and you'll notice that, look, I have my iced tea here for a demonstration. You get a completely different experience when you're sipping through a straw and when you're sipping from a cup. So, definitely do this, but take a sip and get it in your mouth. And what is more intense for you? Is it if you suck in and do like a little gurgle through the tea? A little. Does that intensify? Does it do anything to your experience? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. It depends on if you have the back of your throat opened or closed. If you have the back of your throat open, you do get molecules that come up into your olfactory epithelium. If you have the back of your throat closed, it doesn't do anything. You just get like a really great sound. It doesn't, sucking in does not disperse molecules the way that you think or that you're told that it does. If you take another.
Can I just make a comment on that though?
Yeah.
If I just make a comment on that. So I'm a smeller. I smell everything. When I'm eating, it doesn't matter. The minute something's put on my head goes down onto the plate and I need to smell.
Mhm.
And you're right. A lot of people, when they taste, they do that, that slurp, that splash, whatever you want to call it. But I think that what a lot of people don't fully appreciate is that the purpose of it is to, yes, it's about air, but it's also about dispersing it throughout your mouth, which I think is your point about getting it to the side of your mouth as well, right? So the purpose of slurping is to actually disperse the liquid to all parts of your mouth,
Mhm.
right?
And yeah, and you can do it that way. You can also do it by simply, lowering your tongue or lifting your tongue. Some people find it more, I mean, since we've got taste receptors all over the place, some people find it more powerful to take the liquid on their tongue or around their tongue and lift it to the roof of their mouth. You
Mhm.
know, the point is everybody needs to find what's right for them, instead of what is prescribed. These are options. Figure out which ones work for you. If it doesn't work, discard it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people find an increase in sweetness, which I'm not quite sure. I do kind of get it. If they swish the liquid through their teeth and around their gums. I don't know. But, the point is play with it. And where do you notice your the aroma, the flavor coming up? Is it when you swallow, or when you exhale after the swallow?
For me, exhale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's really interesting because, like, with gurgling or with sucking tea in, some people can do it with, or wine in. Some people can do it without closing off the back of their throats. So they have a completely different experience than those who close the back of their throats when they suck in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right,
So
because they're getting the volatiles in the back, right?
exactly.
Without cooking.
Exactly. Yeah, it's it's lots of fun. So let's look at,
I'm just being a little conscious of the time as well, Margie.
yeah. So let's go ahead and this is how you remember a fragrance. This is how you take a raw material and remember a fragrance. And being able to use like an actual thing, it's a little bit more difficult if you're using like scent strips to learn from. But you still, with the scent strip, you want to have tactile, you want to have you want to associate it with a sound, a color, a time, an emotion. But what's really great is when you have your own trusty fruit, herb, or whatever in hand, you have all of that information right there.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at what each bit of information is going to feed to you here. So you have whatever your fruit is, and you're going to do like a little visual inspection of it. And go ahead and give it some smells. Give it some aroma. Notice the weight of it in your hand. Okay. And then take your fingernail and just run it across the surface. You're going to notice texture, but you're also going to notice, give it a little sniff. What happens to the aroma now? So now you have not just a descriptor of lemon or whatever your chosen fruit is, you have the aroma of the skin or the peel of that fruit. Now, if you just want to, just like dig in and pull the skin back, or use a knife to kind of like peel the skin back.
Am I zesting it?
Yeah, zest away.
Okay.
So the next thing
I have to make a cocktail after this.
Yeah. Darn. You can't let those peels go to waste.
Can't let a zest go to waste.
No, it needs, I can hear it right now crying out for gin.
Right.
So then you've got the inside of the peel or of whatever you're dealing with, and you want to smell that. And the inside is going to smell different and have different qualities than the outside. And compare those.
Yep. So I get a little bit of bitterness because I didn't do a perfect zest. So I've got a little bit of pith in there.
Yeah. So those are all things, and these are going to start to give you descriptors that you'll use with people as well. So you've got the outside might have an oily quality to it. The outside might have a floral quality to it. That quite often people describe lemon as what lemon juice is, or a good example is bergamot.
Right.
The inside of bergamot is completely different than the outside. The outside actually has a more floral quality than citrus quality to it. It's the inside that has a very sour, bitter, citrusy.
Which totally makes sense. Which totally makes sense if you think about the way people describe Earl Grey, right? Because we know it's a citrus fruit, and we talk about it as a citrus fruit, but most people describe it just instinctively as perfumey.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, and it's funny because also osmanthus, if you didn't know osmanthus was a flower, it is classified actually in perfumery as a fruit because it smells like, or the aroma as a fruit because it smells like apricots or peaches. Yeah. So then go ahead and dive down into your fruit a little bit more, cut it open or just make a mess with it. And smell the inside of it. Wow. It's in different places on your fruit are going to smell different. Down here, the flesh smells really peachy and sweet. But up here, it smells green. It smells peachy and green because there's a stem here.
Right.
So, take it off and go ahead and identify each part of what you're smelling. And, nobody's going to stop you if it's an edible product from tasting it. Wow. That's very strange. This peach has a slight note, which I didn't get when I smelled it, but it has a slight note of rosemary. So as you know, as you're going through this whole process, your brain is just unconsciously doing its little work, and it's associating each one of like the textures and weight and um, thought and emotion and you know, juiciness with the aroma that you're experiencing.
Mhm.
You know, you don't when you get to do it with an actual product like this, you don't have to do as much heavy lifting as you do with a scent strip. So when you're oh, I could play with this all day, but I think we've made enough of a mess. So as you memorize things with these different qualities to them, you will be able to, when you're smelling a scent or tasting a tea, you will be able to use those qualities as well. And you would start like with a drill down, like using you go very, very basic when you're smelling something. Is it floral? Is it, you know, ocean? Is it, you know, whatever category you decide to dump it into? You know, is it, you know, a perfume? Is it whatever? And then you start to drill down. Well, you know, is what qualities? Is that a juicy thing? Is that floral? So what kind of florals are there? There's, you know, white flowers, there's roses, there's this, there's that. And then, you know, you eventually come down to your, you know, to your specific.
Yeah, I encourage people to go into their kitchen and just open up the cupboards and just start smelling.
Exactly.
And write down what you're getting, because your obvious ones are going to be your top notes, right? Which I think you talked about last time. Those are, you know, I'm going to smell, I don't know, lemon, and it's going to smell like lemon. It's very basic stuff. And then you start to sort of dig down further and further. And the more you do that, the deeper you're going to be able to dig.
Exactly. And I mean, we, when you're learning, it's really easy to want to, you know, get a bunch of things and smell them all at once. And, you know, go through your pantry. Oh, yes, this is nutmeg. Oh, this is that. This is that. But you're not going to remember it. So you want to expose yourself to, you know, a couple of new fragrances, a couple of new aromas, you know, a day. Smell them again in another couple days. But don't, you know, don't overdo it. It's very, you know, having done it that way to learn fragrances, it's a, you know, it's a real, you have to really make an effort. But if you introduce yourself to a different thing every day and do it in a different, this sounds really weird, but do it in a different location, do it from different, you know, you're going to remember smelling nutmeg from your hand, standing in your living room, listening to something else, more than you will if you just smelled it out of the jar in the kitchen.
Right.
You know, a friend of mine says nutmeg is egg custard at her grandmother's house. You know, and that's you need to have all those things. So it's smelling things in the wild is what's going to anchor it in your memory. And you know, just smelling as many things as you can, you know.
Practice, 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 and don't overload.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Margie. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, it was. I wish I had my my visual aids, because I had some flavor wheels to encourage people just to make their own. But
Well, you if you want to send the image to, or the link or whatever to Addie, then we can share it with the group later.
I can do that. And I do have tasting strips. A couple of people have expressed that they want to figure out if they're super bitter tasters or not. And I have the stuff to do that. So
Okay.
if you want to send me an email with your address, I will pop the strips into an envelope and ship them to you. They're just little bitty things. And you can send it to my personal email address because I'm having trouble with my professional one right now. It is MARZI
Mhm.
at me.com.
Okay. What we'll do, Margie, is Addie will follow up with everybody on this call, and she'll send that. She'll share that email address with everybody, and they can just contact you directly.
Fabulous.
Perfect. Well, thank you a million for doing this, Margie. Hugely appreciate, and also appreciate you, fighting through the technical difficulties. Technology, sometimes fabulous and sometimes an utter disaster.
I know.
But that's okay. We got there in the end.
We
got there in the end.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of you who participated. Hope you enjoyed this. I hope it sort of opened up your mind a little bit to looking at things a little bit differently, and that you took away a couple of tips. I always say if you walk away with one or two, then that is huge progress already. So thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Margie, for your time. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.
Stay cool and hydrated. All of you that are in the heat, David, I'm looking at you. And and the rest of you, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.